it's called the Iron Ring ceremony, where you take an oath. and you take an oath to be responsible for your creation. I think similarly, in digital products that we create, we have a similar responsibility for what we create and the impact that we have in society.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Nodes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest in today's episode. Let's welcome Albert Shum, our design leader who recently retired from Microsoft as a corporate vice president of design. With over 25 years of global consumer brand and design development expertise, Albert has led strategic initiatives across multidisciplinary teams at Nike and Microsoft, scaling design thinking and launching products that influence millions of people. He led the recent efforts to reimagine Microsoft's web experiences, including search, browser, and services across a suite of products that reached over 1 billion consumers at work, home, and school. He had previously led Windows Mobile, Xbox, HoloLens, and device experiences. He has also spoken on the responsibility of design to audience at different forums like AdobeMAX, Innovation Forum in London, 99U Conference, Fast Company Innovation Festivals, and many more. Currently, he is a class advisor at Institute of Design in Chicago. In this episode, Albert had shared great insights on rethinking responsible design in the era of AI, where we started the episode by decoding the concept of responsible design. What are the different principles or framework that designers could use in creating responsible AI solutions? Later then, we spoke on what role does ethical design play in responsible design and how could designers navigate ethical challenges when AI is involved, and how could designers leverage the power of AI and responsible design to contribute to social impact and address inequality and accessibility. Later then, we spoke on in what ways responsible design can be integrated to the entire life cycle of AI system from ideation to deployment, and how could designers balance innovation and responsibility when designing AI-driven products or experience. Then we spoke on how does the collaboration plays a major role between designers, technologists to contribute to a responsible design in AI era, and concluded the show by Albert's take on future of responsible design in context of advancing AI technologies. Join us every week as we delve into the design world, hearing from visionary leaders who shape our lives and inspire our future. We uncover the stories, inspirations, and insights of design luminaries at the forefront of innovation. Thank you, and until the next time, may your dreams be inspired by brilliance of design. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Nodes of Design. In this episode, we have a very special guest with us. Hi Albert.
Hi.
So Albert, how was your day so far?
Good. I feel like it's been a while since we had a chance to talk, and I'm just feel very thankful and for this opportunity to reconnect with you, but also share some of my thinking with the audience. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Albert. So if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
Sure. So I'm Albert, and I've recently retired from Microsoft after, I think almost 15, 16 years working at Microsoft, focusing on UX design, working across amazing teams from early days of what we call Pioneer Square to working in entertainment and devices and Xbox and Zune, to working on mobile and then on Windows Phone, to Windows and kind of rethinking Windows 10, to taking on new areas like search and AI and rethinking about web experiences. So I had a very fortunate career at Microsoft where I got to work on building whole new experiences to kind of rethinking what existing products could be. So I feel very thankful. And then before that, I was at Nike for about 12 years. Working on advanced products and everything from, I think everyone think of Nike as being sneakers, but also I had a chance to work on early days of Nike watches, which led to side of wearables, leading to Nike Fuel Band, and then all the next generation Nike products that encapsulate technology and sports. So that's been my kind of working career for quite a while, and now I'm really more focused on design education and just kind of helping to bring design and forward and hopefully cultivate and work with the next generation of design leaders like yourself.
Thank you so much, Albert. So what was your journey into design and how did you start? And what are your tips to the beginners on starting the design journey?
Yeah. So a little bit about myself, maybe that'll help set some context. So my family emigrated from Hong Kong when to Canada, actually, when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And actually, I think that's why I really, in terms of how I view design, when you go to a whole new country, a whole new world, and don't speak the language and don't know any of the culture or customs, I think your powers of observation, I think is and your curiosity, or just trying to figure out how the world works. I think that's probably my foundation as a designer. And I've always had this kind of view of like looking at the intersectionality, and looking at different cultures, different parts of the world. I think that's really spur my kind of design ethos, and how I view design. To me, design is a bridge. It's a way to connect things, to see patterns, to see hopefully a better solution or better outcome. So I think that's, at least for me, that was my entry into like this idea of like, hey, what's the future you can create by going to a new country? And when I was growing up, I was really into art and sketching and drawing. And I was fortunate my parents got me enrolled into classes at Winnipeg Art Gallery, Saturday morning, sketching, painting. And they were really supportive of my curiosity in arts. And through that, led me into photography and architecture and music. And I think understand that, I think so much of design, to me, it's not necessarily about the making. It's about observing and seeing in the world. That, to me, I think there was one thing I would advise about, especially early on my journey, is seeing the world in a different perspective and trying to understand how other people see the world. That's really the essence of what, to me, is designing. So that's kind of the early on my young childhood of how I got into design.
Thank you so much, Albert. So if you have to give tips to the starters now, what would it be?
Because I started teaching also recently with Institute of Design at Illinois Institute of Technology. And before that, I was teaching at School of Visual Arts and in New York City. And I think talking to a lot of students, I think sometimes I feel like I shouldn't just say like, oh, here's what I did and here's my journey and this is what I did in design school. Because I feel like the context has changed so much. I think obviously the design processes, the tools, the methodology. When I was starting, I think UX was still this idea of like, what is UX or what is UI even? And so it was more traditional product design. It's almost like the Bauhaus school, right? Then I was fortunate enough to go to Stanford product design with David Kelly. And the core, which still holds true, I think, is this idea of, I think, how do we visualize a better future? A lot of what we learned at Stanford was around this idea of visual thinking, like sketching and drawing. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So design was not necessarily about like making the object, was a way to solve a problem and use visual thinking as a way to do that. And I think that's something that gets lost, that so much of our work is about the tool and jumping in the computer and start making versus just sketching and drawing and trying to define the problem and then work on a solution. And I think that physical act of drawing, I worry that's going to get lost more and more when it's just a prompt. And again, that's what I mean. I always worry when I say things like this, I feel like I'm very old. But I do think that generation shift is happening. And I do think the ability to visualize, to see in your mind's eye what you want to create and then manifest that is such a powerful, that spatial ability. I think there's spatial computing everyone's talking about, but that spatial thinking, that visualizing, I think that's something that needs to continue to be taught and not just subsumed by technology. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely, Albert. So thank you so much. So let's begin today's our episode on rethinking responsible design in the era of AI. So can you please explain us the concept of what exactly is responsible design? And are there any specific design principles or framework that can guide designers in creating a responsible AI solution?
Yeah. I think sometimes terminology gets us all tripped up. Like, so responsible design sounds like a whole new methodology. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, there's another thing. It's the design pure process of the day, right? Like, I think there's so many. One of the things I want to talk more about, it's also like when we started working on inclusive design a few years ago, I think we saw a lot of about how do we address exclusion. And I think the team has, again, when we worked on inclusive design, it wasn't like, oh, design thinking is over here and user-centered design is over there. No, that it's all in your toolbox. And this is just it's a framework to help you address certain, I would say, gaps. And inclusive design was a way to ensure that we address everyone's needs. Our mission at Microsoft, as you know, was to empower every person and every organization on the planet. So in order to empower everyone, we've got to make sure that we're not excluding people, that we're inclusive, and the things that we make works for everyone. And how do we do that? And I think understanding accessibility, I think that was at its core. But really, I think the principles and the toolkit was really to one, focus on addressing exclusion and then solving the needs of who's being excluded and then extending that to everyone. So again, I think inclusive design really helped us kind of see things, again, observe things in a different way, right? Likewise, I think responsible design, I think especially in this moment, reflecting on how technology has shaped our culture and society. I think so much, and especially in the last 10 years, with social media, with the amazing tools that connect us, proliferation of information and news, working in search and working in content services. How do we bring information to people, especially today when so much of our information can be targeted and can be, again, I don't want to make it sound simplistic because it's not that simple, but we're so good at giving people what they want. And that helps reinforce or drives engagement, but also reinforces biases. So I think we learned in the last few years that, hey, some of the things that we do, we got to make sure that we're responsible, that there are potential harms. And then how do we address both the unintended consequences, but also even bad actors who might not be doing the right things. So I think more and more of our work is being responsible for what we create. And my analogy is really simple. Like when an architect and an engineer build a bridge and design it and build it, if that bridge falls down, well, the architect and the engineer is responsible, right? Like that's because it's a tragedy when something like that. And actually we have a ceremony in Canada my undergrad was engineering. It's called the Iron Ring ceremony, where you take an oath and you take an oath to be responsible for your creation. I think similarly, I think in digital products that we create, we have a similar responsibility for what we create and the impact that we have in society. So that's the kind of the again, it's not a different design process. I think it's really a framework to help us make sure that we understand that we do have this responsibility for what we create. That's to me the genesis of the responsible design.
That's wonderful, Albert. So what role does ethical design play in responsible design, and how can designers navigate the ethical challenges when AI is involved?
Yeah, I think this is a big topic right now, obviously with AI. And I think you've seen all the headlines, responsible AI work within companies like Microsoft, Google, Meta. I think the reason, and I don't want to sound like high school philosophy class. I think morals and ethics, right? Morals, you're individual. Like I choose to make sure I'm doing the right thing. I think ethics, especially in the context of a company, back to our mission, our values, being mission-based, being true and actually having values. I think how do you do things ethically as a company? I think that's a really important part of capitalism. I think more and more, and especially large companies, you think about big tech, right? We have such a massive footprint, but also I think in terms of how much of people's lives, I would say we're shaping people's lives. That seems like a very powerful word, but we are in some ways. We're integral in a lot of people's lives, be it at home, at work, or at play, right? And in school. So technology is infused in everything now. And I think tech companies have this ethical responsibility to do the right thing. And it's easier to say like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But how do you put it into practice? And fundamentally, it has to be has to be part of the culture. It cannot just be a set of, let's say, principles on a wall and a poster, right? And how do you bring that into your culture, and how do you bring it to practice? I think that's why you see a lot more work around ethics, because the work that we do has such a profound impact on people's lives.
So Albert, how can designers use AI and responsible design to contribute to social impact and address inequality and accessibility?
Yeah, hopefully I address the why before the how, right? Why is, hey, we create things that has such a massive impact. Again, back to the bridge that when it fails. I think sometimes when I look at AI, we're kind of like flying the airplane and trying to fix it at the same time. Does that make sense? Because it's moving so fast, right? So I don't want to say like, oh, stop. And you've seen the pledge of like, hey, let's pause everything for 6 months. You can't be like, that's not practical. And just because you say pause doesn't mean everyone's got to pause, and we'll figure out. And after the 6 months, we might not figure it out because so much of our work is actually indeterminate. Like when I was going to design school, like everything was deterministic. Even in the last 5 years ago, like everything was based on like, oh, here's a UX pattern, right? Here's a UX flow, and here's the architecture. And if you click on this button, you know what's going to happen next, right? Like it's, when I say indeterminate, it's like the UX right now is actually, it's constantly evolving, right? The experience and the relationship you have, even the prompts and the models are evolving. So it's when I say indeterminate, it's not like you get random, but it's actually based on prediction, right? If you look at how large language model works, it's not based on rule based, like remember the old days of like we worked on like, like Cortana or Google Assistant or Siri. It's actually, we actually have writers write what the response were, right? And you can actually program these skills to now, like, hey, when we design something, we have to understand that the response will be generated. It will be a range of responses, and it'll be much more like an experiment. I think for designers, actually, the way I've been framing up responsible design is actually 3 parts. One is reflecting on, hey, when you create something, just like we experimenting, understand that there will be both the intended, like the best case, the user scenario. Like every time we design something, we always show the user journey and this positive, everything works. But also work on things that when things go wrong, you have to design the scenarios when there is a dead end, or when someone does something wrong or something bad, and we have red teams looking at those scenarios. You actually have to work on scenarios when things aren't going well. I think that's a new way of designing. Even in design school, we always present best case user scenario, don't we? Like, we're always like, everything's great and everyone's using it and everyone's happy and they get things done. They find what they need, they achieve their task. But also, I think we have to reflect on scenarios when things go wrong. And then you respond, right? Just like anything, when something breaks, well, how do you fix it? That's your response. So how do you mitigate some of those harms when something goes wrong as best to your ability, or even putting guardrails, or so that things can't go or you can't go beyond the system. And you've seen that in our work, right? When the language model starts hallucinating and start talking about theory of self, like, hey, that's not something we wanted to go into. And you have to mitigate that. So I think that's so important. And then lastly, after you kind of reflect and then respond, you have to rethink, is there a different way? I think again, back to this iterative, we're constantly evolving the model. There's not going to be a static design like, hey, V1, we shipped and it's done. No, that was like 5-10 years ago, UI design or UX, right? Where we ship things and then it's done. And then another team works on it. We move on to something else. Like, I think it's this constant iteration and learning and reflecting, responding, and then rethinking how the system works. And lastly, I think for designers, I think a lot more of our role is not about creating the UI. It's about creating relationships, like over time. And you start to see that. And it's really exciting. I feel like, especially with the work the Bang team is doing, the chat team with the chat, like like actually having history, be able to almost like multitask and go back to where you left off, to be able to share your work, collaborate. I do think that it's almost going to be like the next computing platform. It will be it's kind of ironic, right? Like 30 years ago, we started the C prompt, like the prompt. Like remember in DOS, you had to like directory and send in command line, right? To now, like the prompt is a new form of OS, and I do think how we interact with technology is going to fundamentally change, and the computing model is evolving. So I think UX design is in this really exciting place, and there's going to be new patterns, like I already see a pattern emerge. I don't know if you've seen it. Like there's the right rail, the expanding. Like so, you're looking at two things at once, and this has context on what's on the left page. To like you've seen the Adobe with Firefly, like hey, in context of the action. And to me, that's almost like the new right click. Remember, like right click, we invented that, like the mouse, literally. Like, and I think there's going to be a new form of right click, and in context of action, and generative AI within the object or the area that you're focusing on. So I think these are exciting new patterns that's going to emerge, and people will figure out new patterns and new ways to navigate information and workflow and creation with AI. So again, so much opportunity.
So in what ways can responsible design be integrated into the entire life cycle of an AI system from ideation to deployment?
Yeah, I think this is I want to remind the audience that responsive design, it's not a new thing. It's not a new design process, right? Like every team, like a company like Microsoft, I always joke when I talk to different teams. I talk, I'm sure I talk to friends at Google, Meta, like all large tech companies. There's not one design process. Like you can't go into like, like, hey, everyone, where's the design process? Every team has, and it's just like there's not one engineering process, right? Like how do you build? But I do think there are different disciplines, and it's about how do you work together as product makers, right? Between PM, product management, program management, to design, research, marketing. Like how do you work across teams on AI products? I think it's gonna be really interesting, and I do think you have to kind of separate the framework I've been using for teams that in different disciplines is you have to separate design with AI, like the tools I use, right? Like and then designing AI experiences and creating experiences that have AI integrated, infused, diffused into the system. So focusing on designing with AI or building products with AI, I think the way we build with AI, especially in tech, I feel like a large part, you think about research, and remember like data science and getting into analytics, and I remember looking at dashboards, everyone's thinking about like, hey, how do we drive those engagement numbers, or how do we get better results, right? Like, I feel like that's so antiquated. Like I do think that the tools and processes designed by AI, how to actually create different designs that's tailored. I always had this vision where it's a closed loop, right? With the end user, that each design will actually be tailored and personalized to different individuals. That your UI and my UI, what needs to be the same or should be different? And right now, a lot of personalization is still like toggles and switches. Like, hey, set my Bing image background, or personalize my desktop or my Mac, or lay out my apps on my phone. Like you think about that, that hasn't changed. That paradigm hasn't changed for like 30 years. So I do think the way we build experiences will evolve, where we're learning and adapting to users' needs, because I think the AI system, the way our tools will work, will actually allow us to generate different designs, not just one size fits all, right? The joke we always had at Windows was, it's like ordering pizza for 1 billion people. No one likes, pineapple in their pizza. Well, some people do, but like it's impossible to make the same pizza for everyone, right? And I think designing with AI will evolve and allow us to really tailor more personalized experiences. And then on designing AI experiences, the products that we make, I do think there's going to be a lot of conversation and then about platform versus, the horizontal versus the vertical. I think how AI should you have one AI that go across all the products, right? Like, is it co-pilot everything, which makes it easy, right? Because there's a global Mac, right? If you make something global, then everyone can take advantage of it. At the same time, the tension is, well, because it is global, is it the best for the local experience, right? And you're gonna have a bunch of verticals and trying things out. Like, hey, I have a customer that has this need, and we need a better solution that's very specific to their need. So I think the global and the local AI products, especially at large companies like Microsoft at that scale, I think that's something you're going to see evolve. You're going to see Apple try to figure this out. You're going to see Google, Meta, and you're going to look for those global and then local patterns and see what sticks. Like right now, if you look at Adobe, they decided to go very local. And like, there's like, hey, there's AI in Illustrator, there's AI in Photoshop. And it's a very localized value because they want people to adopt and start building muscle memory and learning, right? Whereas there's a beauty in having something global where it just works. And it'll be curious, like you saw the Apple Pro Vision launch. I don't think they talked about large language model. They talked about transformer models, which is great. And I think they're really trying to avoid this idea of AI as this kind of generic thing. But if you look deeper, like around Siri was this global thing that work across system where they start building, and you start seeing Apple do that. They started doing more local AI experience. So you start seeing these patterns evolve, and I think product teams will continue to work that way until something evolves and matures and gains adoption and becomes the convention almost.
Thank you so much, Albert. So Albert, how can designers balance innovation and responsibility when designing AI-driven products or experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of touched on it a bit earlier. I think this idea, like things are moving so fast. like I imagine, even last summer where we start working with ChatGPT and like, remember when you first start using Midjourney, like last summer to now, like all the tools and the progress it's made. So this pace is incredible. And I haven't seen it. I think probably the last big cycle was like mobile, when mobile first kicked off. But even then it was a bit slower, like, because the device launch, like, oh, there's a new iPhone, or there's a new Nokia, or there's a new like Motorola, like that was the pace. To now, it's like almost every week. So the pace of innovation, I would say it's unprecedented. So I think for designers, I'm sure everyone feels like they're running like they're running a sprint while it's also a marathon. And I think that's where, when you're moving so fast, that's when the things break. So I do think you do need to make, especially design leaders, need to make space and time to, like, back to that idea of reflection. Like we've always had this idea of like having like planning. Like if you can't plan 5 years out or 3 years out or 2 years out, but you can plan, next 6 months, right? I think, or even next year. But having some cadence, some planning cycle where you can reflect and take in what you learn, and then work on more midterm, like looking at where the strategy is. Again, back to this idea of global and local. What are the things that's working across the system? What are the things that are working within each product areas? And start kind of building that system. And I think there's going to be a really interesting tension around idea of design systems. I don't know, like like we always said, like, hey, we're moving so fast. Like, why do we need a design system? But I do think there will be certain patterns that's going to emerge where you want it back to being global, that you want it to work the same way across products, because it just makes it easier for everyone. I think you also want a design system that you can adapt and tailor for local needs. So I think for designers, how you can work is think about creating the time and space with your leadership to start planning about, and I call it the leapfrog model. Like while a current product is being built and iterated on, have some folks have some capacity to work on leapfrog into the next phase, right? So you kind of constantly leapfrogging 3 months, 6 months, and I think that's how you really drive new innovation too. So that's one way to, I think, thinking about a design system from a global sense and local sense for your product area, especially around UX patterns that you're starting to see emerge and build that. So I think that's going to be another area that's really going to be interesting. So I see that's the balance of innovation. And then lastly, I think responsibility. I think that's really back to the learnings, getting signals. When I mentioned about kind of responding is actually learning on what things work, what didn't, and reflecting on that and codifying it so that as you work on the next iteration, you're going to build it better. So that's the kind of broad strokes.
Thank you, Albert. So how can interdisciplinary collaboration between designers and technology contribute to responsible AI design in AI era?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that before about the process, that it's really about collaboration across teams. And I do want to build on, I think there's going to be some new roles. I've kind of written about this too. Like if there's like prompt engineering, what is prompt design? Like, is it a combination between a writer and a designer? Like, so I think creating, I think there's many new ways of new roles where I think ethics and responsibility is also going to be embedded into the teams. It's not going to be, I think we're moved beyond like, hey, there's going to be a centralized team. They're going to determine what's ethical, and then they would view everyone's work and then decide like, oh, yes, that's ethical, that's not. Like, I don't think that's as pragmatic, and nor does it really work. I think it's going to be embedded into each team. When I mentioned culture, but I do think there's going to be new roles where some designers, maybe their job is to be the responsible designer and they're like design emphasis, but they're also writers. And maybe it's part research that they understand and try to work on modeling harms and working on scenarios of things going wrong when things break, they're actually addressing it. So I think there's going to be new roles that's going to evolve because there's going to be need for new roles, and I'm excited. Again, I'm more the optimist like about AI, that it's going to create new jobs and new opportunities and new ways of creation.
Thank you, Albert. So how do you vision the future of responsible design in context of advancing AI technologies?
Yeah. So again, like I said, I'm an optimist. That I like to believe in, and especially large, big tech companies, that's going to be part of the culture. That it's going to be part of the values, responsible AI, responsible design. That's going to be embedded into each team, into culture, and where we'll invest in roles that will help bring into practice. That it's not one size fits all. It's not one methodology, but that each team will adopt responsible design in a way that's appropriate for their product needs and their customer needs and their stakeholders. And back to, I think the second part to responsible design is actually understand stakeholders. I think so much of our work has been focused on user-centered design. It's like, hey, we just think about, and it's actually natural that, hey, there's an end user, they use a product, and we're 100% focus on their needs, right? Which I think that's the tradition, and it's right. It's righteous, and we should continue to that. But as we look at the system, so much more of our work is about the ecosystem and the multitude or different sets of stakeholders and aligning stakeholder needs. There's the business stakeholder, and we kind of see this tension especially in Microsoft, understanding consumer and enterprise. There's different stakeholders who actually make decisions in terms of what products the company buys, to who implements it, the technology, and then the end user, how to use the technology. I think understanding the different types of stakeholders and how AI would impact their work and what they do and how they do their work, I think that's going to continue to be really important, because I think that's back to responsibility. Responsibility doesn't end and nor does it begin at one point. It's actually the whole system.
Thank you so much, Albert, for sharing all these wonderful insights with us. So could you please share with us, how does your day look like? Any interesting stories?
Well, I feel very, very privileged that actually, like, I think I again, one of the things I'm so appreciative of, and this sounds a bit trite, but it's time. Time is, you don't realize, like, wow, how much we spend our time at work and creation and building. And again, I love my time with the team, and I got to travel and visit you in India. It's amazing, and so I feel so fortunate. But this idea of choosing what you spend your time on seems odd when I say that, but that is such a privilege and such a big reward that I could pursue my intellectual curiosity, but also decide, like, hey, if I want to spend my time on something today, and I can or not, right? And I could spend my time learning. Today I was learning how to scuba dive, trying to get my scuba dive license, but also I was working on thinking about. I actually had a call with a bunch of design leaders, like, hey, should we have a AI leadership summit? Because there's so much appetite to learn and build on each other's work on AI. So I feel like that's a big part of my day, is deciding on what I want to do personally that's rewarding, to how do I take advantage of the position I'm in to connect with next generation of designers, but also help move the industry forward in a way that I feel I have the intellectual freedom to pursue. So that's why I've been working with schools, and hopefully I'll continue doing that this fall. And I do want to give a shout out to the students I worked with this last spring at the Institute of Design, and it's so rewarding working with students because their questions and curiosity helps kind of keep me, I would say, creatively challenged. And I think there's nothing better as a designer, as a creator, to continue to push on creativity. And I just feel like this is such a amazing time to be in design, to pursue the unknown. And I think ambiguous front end of design is the most exciting part. We don't know the answer, and you jump in and you create in a responsible way, in a meaningful way, to create the outcomes that we want. Hopefully create things that will make the planet better. I think that's always great. So I feel very fortunate. My day is filled with personal pursuits and intellectual pursuits.
Thank you so much, Albert, for sharing that. So we'll conclude the show by your 3 favorite book recommendations and people who inspire you the most in this space.
Oh, wow. That's a hard one. Just 3. There's so many. Maybe it's always, to me, it's, I feel very privileged, and I feel like I'm name dropping now. I've had a lifelong friendship and mentor with Bruce Mao. Actually, I just visited him in Chicago last month. And he gave me this book he just personalized. It's called The Nexus by Bruce Mao and Julio and Ortino. And it really speaks to me because Nexus is about the convergence of art, technology, and science, right? This intersectionality. And actually, Bruce wrote my recommendation letter to help me get into Stanford. So I owe a lot of my career to him. But this idea of art and science, the left brain, right brain, the synthesis, I think that really speaks to me at the core. Back to you when we started this conversation, East meets West. When I emigrated, the nexus of culture, I think that's when good stuff happen, when we appreciate those intersectionality, those nexus. So I think Bruce's book and Hulu's book, I think it's a big plug, shout out to them. I think the other one that's kind of personal is Kenya Hara's book, but he actually signed it, so I'm great. Again, name dropping, designing design, and I just appreciate his. It's always designers have this sense of wonder, like such a broad view of design. Because working in tech, we have a very heads down. But this is my posture, right? We're kind of looking at the screen. Like most of our work is about the screen, right? I think Kenya, to me, it's this idea of like design is just it's life, and he has such a broad view of how design is environment, design is product, design is texture, textile, design is experiences. So I think that, again, back to perspective, that just opens up this to me a lens of design and different philosophy almost of design that I really appreciate. Yeah, big shout out to Kenya Howard's book, Design Design. And then I'm gonna cheat. My other books, my next book is actually you can't buy. And this is a book, and for every team, most of the teams, like I've always created like can you see this one? This is the Windows Design Playbook. So I always have a team book that we created where we talk about our culture, our principles, our roles, process. What is our design agenda? What do we mean when we say design? And really, I think creating that shared purpose. I think it seems quaint, like, oh, this creating a book for your team. But I feel like especially that maybe that's something I really miss. We formed the last team I was with you. We formed during the pandemic. We never really physically got a chance to get together until I had a chance to visit you in India. But this idea of actually creating a playbook for your team, that's something I really recommend to everyone if they can, to manifest a physical object that represents your team values and how you create and synthesize that, because so much of our work is the intangible, it's the virtual. To actually have something physical that it just has substance, right? It just feels real. Like, hey, this is something I can hold my hand. We wrote it down, we codify it, and these are our values, and this is how we work, and this is why we're here. And this is our purpose. I think that's such an important thing to do as a design team, as a design leader. I feel very fortunate. And then more name drops. Like I have some friends that recently wrote books, like Kevin Bethune book, Reimagining Design. Greg Hoffman, I worked with him at Nike. Actually, Kevin was at Nike too. Greg's book is Motion by Design. And then Cliff Kwong's book, User Friendly. I think those are kind of like current volumes. If you were in design school right now, you probably like already have some of the books. But I think there's just so many. And maybe this speaks to like, I think design is such a rich field and there's so many amazing perspectives. I think being a sponge, I think that's one of the models of like don't try to be a know-it-all, just be a sponge, just absorb. And I think you learn, there's so much to learn, and to take in. I think design is such a rewarding career, and it's a lifelong career. It's not about like, hey, what did I make today? It's about, hey, how can we make the world better tomorrow? So I think that's one of the powerful force of design, that we can create the change that we want. I feel very fortunate to be part of this community. So thanks for having me. I've always appreciated designers on the team, and design really to inspire me are the ones who are selfless. Like they're just making others better. They're just constantly helping. Like I've seen design, it could be a design integrator, a UX engineer. But I think a lot of designers went to design school, not because like, hey, I want to pursue design because I could be famous and be rich and have a lot of followers. Like I think we all, like I've seen designers on a team who just work on a problem, just trying to get that last detail, that last iteration on the damn icon. And I think designers who work really trying to the craft and understand the craft and really working on those details and try to solve the problem. I think that's what inspires me, because they're making. and they're building and they're shaping the future. And we all know, we kind of, not that we all know, this seems to make it sound so trite again, that design is hard. Building product is hard. Building product at scale is really, really hard. Building products with large team is hard. And maybe like all the unsung heroes of design and research and product teams that work tirelessly to work on those details, making sure everything is just right. I think that's what inspires me, that energy, that passion, to pursuit of making things to just work. And it's not easy. And I think that's the part I want everyone to recognize more and more of. It's not the big icon heroes like or your title and who like that. Like I think that's easy to kind of that myth of the hero designer that's going to come up with a great idea that's going to solve everything. We all know that does not exist, and that's not how real design happens. So what inspires me is back to the amazing people that I work with who tirelessly work day to day to make a better product.
Thank you so much, Albert, for sharing all these wonderful recommendations with us. We're looking forward to host you again in our upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, please reach out. Anyone have questions? I'm on LinkedIn. Check out my newsletter. Send me feedback, questions. Love to hear from everyone. Thank you.